The deadliest object on Earth is still sitting in a basement, not in a vault, not under guard, just there, beneath Chernobyl's Reactor 4. In December 1986, a search crew found it. A solidified mass so radioactive that 5 minutes beside it could kill you within days. Only one man photographed it up close. To understand what he stood next to, you need to know how it was born. On the night of April 25, 1986, operators at Chernobyl's Reactor 4 began a routine safety test. They wanted to see if the spinning turbine generators could temporarily power the water cooling pumps during a sudden blackout. But by 1:23 a.m. on April 26th, unstable operating conditions triggered a massive power excursion. 2 rapid explosions blew the lid off the reactor, destroying the core. Inside the ruptured vessel, temperatures surged past 2,000 degrees Celsius. This was not a typical fire. It was a nuclear furnace. The intense heat liquefied the uranium fuel assemblies and melted their zirconium cladding. As the molten metal dripped downward, it dissolved everything in its path: structural steel, control rods, and the sand and concrete of the building's foundation. This chaotic mix fused into a new material called corium. Corium is not pure uranium. It is a highly toxic, glassy, lava-like mass. The silica in the concrete and sand vitrified the mixture, turning it into a semi-fluid glass, while the steel and zirconium added complex metallic layers. Driven by gravity and its own decaying heat, this radioactive soup began eating through the reinforced concrete floors, searching for a way down into the dark service corridors below. Directly below the melting core lay a massive bubbler pool, now flooded with millions of liters of water from firefighting efforts. If the corium, heated to 2,000 degrees, melted through the ceiling and hit this water, the resulting steam explosion would dwarf the initial blast, shattering the remaining reactors and scattering highly radioactive dust across Europe. To prevent this, 3 plant engineers, Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bespalov, and Boris Baranov, descended into the dark, flooded basement. Equipped with basic respirators, wetsuits, and a single flashlight that quickly failed, they felt their way through waist-deep radioactive water to locate the manual release valves. They successfully turned the heavy wheels, draining the pool. Despite modern myths of a suicide mission, all 3 survived. Baranov died in 2005, while Ananenko and Bespalov lived for decades. But upstairs, the molten reactor fuel was still moving. By December 1986, the fires were suppressed, and the original concrete sarcophagus was under construction, but scientists still lacked a complete picture of where the melted fuel had gone. Crews carrying dosimeters began systematically exploring the ruined, dark basement corridors directly beneath Reactor 4. Inside a third-floor service hallway designated Room 217, they located the primary flow. Spilling from an overhead pipe was a massive, lumpy, dark gray mound of hardened lava. Its wrinkled, layered texture resembled the foot of an elephant, giving the object its permanent name. This mass was not an isolated block of debris, but the most prominent formation in a sprawling field of solidified, fuel-containing material. As the molten soup ran down vertical stairways and pooled against cold concrete walls, the cooling surfaces directly shaped its final form. Solidification had stopped its physical advance, but this was merely a change of physical state, not a return to safety. Encased within this dark, glassy crust, the active reactor fuel remained just as lethal as the day it melted. Initial measurements near the mass recorded approximately 10,000 roentgens per hour. Because roentgens measure ionization in the air, converting this to an actual biological dose requires calculating radiation energy, shielding, exposure geometry, and duration. Still, early liquidators faced brutal warnings. 30 seconds of exposure would trigger dizziness, 2 minutes would cause hemorrhaging, and 5 minutes would guarantee death within days. While these specific biological thresholds remain unverified historical claims, the hazard was extreme. Robotic wheeled cameras were sent in to capture the first images, keeping operators at a safer distance. But obtaining physical samples proved nearly impossible. Standard drills failed to penetrate the dense, glassy matrix. This led to desperate improvisations. Anecdotes claim that technicians eventually resorted to firing a rifle, and later an AK-47, at the mass from a shielded corridor to chip off fragments for laboratory analysis. These disputed accounts reflect the chaotic nature of studying an object that resisted ordinary science. Artur Korneyev did not enter the ruins of Reactor 4 out of curiosity. Born in Kazakhstan in 1952, Korneyev graduated with a degree in radiation protection before joining the Chernobyl staff as a monitor in 1977. After the 1986 explosion, his expertise made him indispensable. As deputy director of the shelter, he spent years leading teams directly into the most heavily contaminated rooms, systematically mapping the cooling corium, and building an exhaustive photographic record of the interior damage. In 1996, Korneyev stood just 2 meters from the elephant's foot. He set up his Nikon F4 camera with a 35mm lens, opened the shutter for 1/15 of a second, and walked into the frame beside the toxic mass. The resulting image is ghostly, blurred, and heavily grained. This distortion was not a camera malfunction. The high dose rate coming from the corium literally fogged the Kodak Tri-X film, scarring the physical celluloid with invisible radioactive energy. Korneyev viewed his grim environment with a quiet, survivalist wit, later calling the elephant's foot the most dangerous tourist attraction in the world. But decades of working in the dark corridors extracted a heavy price. In 1998, medical examiners diagnosed him with radiation-induced cataracts. 2 years later, he developed chronic thyroiditis. While doctors cautioned that no single afternoon beside the corium could be definitively blamed for every ailment, the cumulative damage was undeniable. By 2005, his lifetime occupational exposure had crossed safe thresholds, and authorities permanently banned him from entering the reactor building. Korneyev survived another 17 years, dying of natural causes in 2022 at the age of 73. His life and his body remain permanently bound to the glassy mass in room 217. The elephant's foot still rests in the dark basement of Reactor 4. While the mass has cooled physically and its radiation levels have steadily declined since 1986, it remains extremely hazardous at close range. The corium is structurally decaying. Cracking and mechanical breakdown are slowly turning the solid glass matrix into fine, highly toxic radioactive dust. To prevent this dust from escaping, engineers slid the new safe confinement arch over Reactor 4 in 2016. Often described by its builders as the largest land-based movable structure ever built, this steel arch is designed to contain airborne particles and assist future dismantling, not to make the reactor's interior safe for humans. The surrounding hazards became clear during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Military forces occupied the exclusion zone, digging trenches and disturbing the topsoil in the highly contaminated Red Forest. While Ukrainian officials reported acute radiation sickness among these troops, independent analyses and the International Atomic Energy Agency found no verified cases of lethal exposure. The danger here came from breathing in resuspended soil and dust, not from direct contact with the deeply buried corium. This persistent threat reveals the true scale of the disaster's timeline. The different radioactive isotopes within the corium decay on vastly different schedules. While the immediate lethal threat of the elephant's foot has decreased, the long-lived isotopes will remain a severe waste management challenge for over 100,000 years. The elephant's foot is not a relic of the past. It is an active, ticking clock. As the corium decays into toxic dust beneath its steel dome, it reminds us that nuclear mistakes outlive the nations that made them. Watch our documentary on the Cuban Missile Crisis next.